Welcome to Meet the Moment podcast produced by the Real Estate Business Institute. This podcast is an exploration of what today's industry leaders and agents need to know to be profitable, productive, and have fun. I'm Matthew Rathman, and I'm joined by co-host Kimberly Allard as we chat with thought leaders, brokers, and agents who can help agents meet the moment of change in the real estate industry. Recommendations made in this episode are merely provided best practices. The practices of any realtor are subject.
Hello, everybody,
to
and welcome to another edition of Meeting the Moment podcast. My name is Matthew Rathman, and I am here with my amazing co-host, Kimberly Allard. Kimberly, how are you?
Information, resources,
I'm wonderful.
And upcoming
Great to see you. And I can
Good to see you.
I know this is a podcast.
Yeah, yeah. We record so we can see each other, but we don't want to publish out there so that we don't have to, take a shower or put anything other than pajamas on. It's great. It's very casual. So you've been on travel a bit. You were teaching up in Massachusetts, doing some instructor development. How'd that go?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. What a wonderful opportunity to see potentially tomorrow's best and brightest trainers. It was a group of about 30 people. So I know a lot of them were doing it for brokerage purposes. Some of them were doing it for potential careers in presenting and instructing and training. And we'll see where they end up. It was fun. I got to do that also with the wonderful Adorna Carroll.
Yeah, she's amazing. I was jealous when I saw you all posting about that, and also jealous that she chose you. But that's okay. We know who Mom's favorite is. It's okay. I just learned to accept it. Yeah, I mean, all you New Englanders, I get the word out in a minute, stay together anyway, so it's fine. It's something about the accent.
There was a lot of New England accent in that room. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I also got to do some instructor development not too long ago. Actually, I was doing it for Las Vegas via Zoom, which was super cool. And we were talking about some emerging tools and things we're using. And as always, no matter what I'm teaching, there's always somebody who, is eager to hear about how we can use AI to do those things, and which is our episode today. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and how it can benefit us and what we're using it for. So, Kimberly, what are you using it for?
My grocery list? Well, I'm using it for all the things you've told me to use it for because, you've got fabulous ideas. I am using it. I will give you one of my first really thoughtful, appreciative moments of AI because I use it for all the silly things that everybody online is using it for. But I was in the position to change my platform for my CRM. And I'm a big fan of task lists or action items. And, so we have one that says you just listed a buyer, you just listed a seller. The seller's property just went under agreement. The buyer just got an accepted offer. And then all sorts of post-closing action items. Let's just say that some of my action items still had the word facts in it, which indicates that they've been around for probably 20 years. And I have had on my to-do list for, at least 5 to 10 years, redo my action plans. And instead of just buckling down and doing them all at once and taking the time to do it, I would simply look at what a 8-year-old action item was and understand what it should be translated to in this year. Yeah. Well, finally I said, you know what? This sounds like a task for ChatGPT. And sure enough, I put in some prompts and I know we'll talk about that, but I came up with a pretty well laid out set of action items that I then could use to revamp what I've been using for over 20 years to keep myself, consistent with the service that I provide. So I was thrilled. And that to me was really an eye opener to encourage myself to, just keep thinking of what can it do for me today.
Well, that is a very good and adult use case for that. I use it to identify the rashes that I have and tell me how to solve them so that I don't have to go to a doctor and explain myself. No, I'm kidding. I'm only a little bit kidding. No, it's not as doomsday-ish as WebMD. Like if you go to WebMD and you're like, hey, I've got this bruise underneath of my fingernail, and it goes, oh, you're going to die in 3 days. I feel like ChatGPT is a little kinder to me and says, okay, that's not a big deal. You big baby, you need to figure this out. You'll be fine.
And if something happens to you, I'll miss you.
Yeah, that's right. I'll miss your $20 a month subscription fee, but thanks for playing. Yeah, no, I'm obviously using it for a lot of things. And about a month ago, I put a sticky note for a period of 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Sticky note on my computer that said, and I don't do sticky notes. Like I'm a very anti-paper person in general. And I know some of our listeners just turned us off right then, but I need things organized and searchable, and I can do that online or on my computer through things. So, but I did put a sticky note on my computer, and it said, "Can AI help you with this?" And it was just world changing for me because I feel like a lot of people see AI and there's a little bit of fear. We'll talk about some risk management stuff here. That's some legitimate concerns here. But I feel like we are underutilizing it. For our viewers at home, Kimberly just showed me her very organized and very various sizes. You got like a whole assortment of Post-it notes over there. That's like
I'm now adding, can AI do it? My Post-it note to my computer. There you go.
You're welcome.
The tip of the day. That's amazing. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, my wife kind of laughed at me. She goes, you could just put it on the background on your desktop and just have it there so you can see instead of paper. Because she's the Post-it note queen. Like she has literally boxes of various colored Post-it notes in the house. It's really weird. I know this was not a Post-it note episode, but my wife will put like a Post-it note on the door going, hey, today is recycling day. Hey, the dishes are clean. And she says they're for her, the reminders for her, but they're not.
No.
They're invitations for me to do my part in the house. But I use Todoist. Todoist is my favorite action item list. And so I know exactly what I got to take my medication today. I've got to exercise today. I am looking at it now. I got to call some people to get them to run for our local board because I'm on the nominating committee.
So what's
like it's my daily thing. Todoist, Todoist.
I need AI to organize my apps.
Well, I've had, like you, a checklist, and mine is in Todoist, and it's reoccurring. So it's like, let's say as a broker, onboarding an agent. An agent joins. We use Asana for my whole team to make sure they do all the things that they're assigned to do for that new agent and make sure. And if you're a broker out there, like, we are working on at REBI, the Real Estate Business Institute, we are working on some onboarding checklists and templates, but those always are things that we can create to help you along, but you still got to infuse like your specific stuff there, right? And so when AI creates my to-do action items, using Asana for onboarding to keep my staff on track, there's still things personally I want to do. Like I send them handwritten notes when they join our company. I want to call and check on them on a certain number of days to make sure certain things are done and make sure they're just feeling good. And like that first 90 days is really your honeymoon phase, where you need to make sure that they're all squared away. And I've had a list going on forever and Todoist that reminds me to call and love on them, just hear them out, schedule mentoring meetings, reschedule because they tend to get canceled. And I said, okay, here, ChatGPT, here's my checklist. What am I missing to make sure I'm humanizing this process? Because our company's fairly large, and so I don't get to see everybody all the time, right? So they just don't. And it goes, oh, here's 4 things you're missing. And it was excellent. It was just stuff I hadn't, nice little extra touches I hadn't thought about. And I go, cool. Can you now recreate this in a list that I can import in the Todoist? Because with Todoist, you can import through CSV, through an Excel spreadsheet, all your action items. And I said, while you're doing that, dear ChatGPT, can you, because this is how a lot of my stuff starts up, like just testing to see how far she can go. And my ChatGPT is a she, because she's always right, and she never hesitates to tell me I'm wrong. So it's
I'm glad you figured that out.
Yeah.
Let's just start with the woman is always right.
Yeah, that's right. So I said, can you also assign um, dates that are relevant to the day the person starts? So in other words, I don't want like 500 checklist items. I only want you to tell me through Todoist that on day 3 do this, and then I don't hear back from that checklist until day 7 to do that, or day 12 or whatever. And I want responsive dates. And it says, sure, no problem. Like, what else do you want? And then she started suggesting things I didn't even know she could do. And I got this incredibly powerful template now that with 2 clicks, it will initiate that onboarding process through Todoist, because there are certain things that don't, like, it's not in the CRM, it's not, there's other things that don't do that. And anyway, that was just recently, like, I just stumbled on asking a bunch of questions, and it was amazing what she could do.
So as much as I love this discussion, I am only privileged to this level of knowledge because you've educated me. But maybe for our listeners, we could go back a little bit
Sure.
and talk about what AI is, because people may not understand how to best use it if they don't really understand what it is. And AI is artificial intelligence, right?
Yes.
And I mean, here's, a layman's question. How is AI as a platform different than Google? Is it just a better search engine that does a better job thinking about things? I mean, help us all understand what the difference between those two is.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, just again, another plug here. REBI has a 1-day certification program on AI, and we spent about an hour kind of breaking down what it is in the beginning, because you're right. I found out that I would get excited about this stuff I just noodled over with you about using how I got Todoist to do this amazing checklist thing. Um, and people get excited about that stuff, but they're not sure what the words mean and how those phrases work. And so and actually AI came about in the 1950s. So it is not a new technology. It's just that the technology has advanced to support the concepts and the model. And so around the 1950s or so, we started saying, what if? Matter of fact, in 1947, kind of going back in time, a book by Sir Isaac Asimov, not sure if he was a sir back then, but he eventually was. Isaac Asimov, I, Robot, which was a horrible version of it, was done in a movie with Will Smith. The movie's great. It just did not do justice to the book. And in the book, we were introduced to a robot named Robbie, and Robbie is a thinking robot. He can follow commands. He knows to look out. He was a guardian for a young child. And eventually the progress of him learning to speak is very parallel to AI as we know it from the 50s till now. But Robbie basically had 3 primary commands. And the first of all, he could not harm humans. Number 2, he couldn't allow humans to be harmed. And I forgot number 3, but it's not important.
He would
So
only sell his house with a realtor.
he would only use a realtor to sell his house. That's absolutely right. And he would only allow it to be fully publicly marketed. Robbie, being very smart, did not allow for a 3-week off-market attempt by his agent. But that's a different podcast. We could do
Different
some
podcast.
anyways, so Robbie, comes about and he learns and he grows, and that's a lot of what happened here. The idea is that Google was a question. You said, I got a question, and Google will go look through. It was like a librarian went and looked at all the libraries and all the books in a library to get you an answer, right? That's what Google was. He or she just went out and knew what books to get for you to bring it back to you so you could do your own reading, right? And figure things out on your own. And Google has been, by the way, largely unchanged in almost 25 years. That's just all it's done. It's just gotten a little better at it and a little better at selling us ads. Now, what happens with AI is that we get these large language models.
What I should interrupt you and say is sometimes when you're searching, or all the time, there are people paying to be in order of what you see in front of you, which is again the caveat, be aware that the people's information or the companies that come in front of you on a Google search are likely paid to be there or sponsored. So, that's what we were ending up with.
Yeah, I mean, it does get you a little more cynical when you realize that librarian is being paid to not get you what you're looking for, but she's getting paid to bring you the content that she's incentivized to bring you instead of the thing that may actually answer, which is always a problem. And then, well, here's what happened. I go to Google and I have to click 5 links to try to find my answer because some of it's old or some of it's irrelevant or some of it's not from a trustworthy source. It's just that they have been promoted higher. Now we get to AI, and AI is these large language models called LLMs, or some people call them llamas. It's a collection of basically the entire world's knowledge, everything that's been written, every video, every transcript, every TED talk, every scholarly work, and every Joe Blow with a blog. It indexes all of this stuff, and then it learns what you're likely looking to get as an answer. So instead of giving you 10 links to go sort through and find your own solution, it says, okay, here's the information you want. But let me go a step further. What do you want me to do with this information? And this is where we get into generative AI, where it actually creates things from what you're requesting as opposed to just giving you the result. So inherently, they're two very different things. One is just searching. And yes, AI is now becoming part of the search index results. So if you go on Google, you're seeing that response there. And it's important to note that in a Google search, you're using 1/100th of the world's energy to get what you are in an inquiry into AI for the moment because of the computer heavy use of computer systems to take that data and to start think a little bit more like a human. So, in the most basic of terms, it is a computer algorithm designed to not only answer your question, but serve your need, as opposed to a Google search, which is just to get you information.
So if it could be the equivalent of, instead of me doing the search and instead of me looking through the data, instead of me determining what's relevant, I could say, let's say I'm an attorney, and I'm not, just let's be clear. But if I had my paralegal or maybe a junior, who knows, anybody but an attorney, go out and do work, and then I was to present it in court, and that work wasn't complete or thorough, I would still, my paralegal or somebody else that I asked to do that work, and I went out and presented it as my own. So we've essentially got people thinking for us and preparing material for us that's Chat GPT, and then we're taking it and presenting it as our own, and that presents some risks, right?
It does. And let me just talk about that. I love that you brought that up. And by the way, for those listening, we did not script this conversation. So this is legitimately us just talking about these things. And I love that you bring that up, because here's the model that I've given for a lot of people to look at ChatGPT. ChatGPT, as I said, my model is, her name is Kit. She is female. She has a female voice pack, and she's can be a little sassy, which I kind of like. And her name is Kit after the Knight Rider show from the 80s that I truly believe should have been a female car. But anyways, it was you're familiar with it, was a very gentlemanly
Was it a
car.
Trans Am?
It was. It was a badass looking Trans Am.
Yeah.
Nice, sleek, black, little red light in the front of it. It's awesome. Anyway, so Kit and I have these conversations, and here's how I learn to actually get the best results from her and keep me in the mindset of having to check her work. So she has a PhD level knowledge of everything, right? She has access to all the world's knowledge and history and everything that's ever been published and accessible by the internet. And she's very bright and she's very quick to get things back. But she's also the assistant I just hired right out of college. She doesn't know people quite yet, although she's getting there. And she only knows to go do what I ask her to do. So if you hire an assistant as a real estate agent, and that person comes in, and again, she has a PhD level academic knowledge, she is probably more capable than I am at writing. She's probably more capable than I am at doing research. She's more capable at I am answering questions. But she doesn't know how I want the information, and she doesn't know what sources to always use.
And
So
she's
if I heard that assistant,
practical, she's
correct,
never once been in real estate in your scenario. She's never, doesn't have, may not have a license, although she could probably pass the licensing
she could.
exam in all states, but she doesn't understand, like you said, she doesn't understand people in that part of it.
That's exactly right. But she also doesn't know how our MLS works. She doesn't know how I want content, how I want to write something, the voice I want to use when I write things. And here's the reality. And look, I'm the first defender of the younger generations. I'm not one of those people who, I'm 50 and I know a lot of 50-year-olds are yelling at kids to get off their lawn now. I'm defending the younger generation, but most of them have had nothing but screen to screen contact about humanity and their family unit. They don't understand how people work. And so they can write something that is on point grammatically, but they don't know about my target audience. They don't know how I want things phrased when I write that listing description to get connection. And so I'm a disciple of Donald Miller's story brand as a marketing thing. And so if I give my PhD level assistants a direction and say, I want you to write a listing description, but I've never introduced my PhD level AI assistant to the house. She's never walked in. She's never seen it. She has no idea. She can write something nice, but it's generic. It's when I say, here are the 12 value added features of this home that must be incorporated into your description. And I would like you to write it in my voice, which is generally friendly and positive and first person as an agent. And I would like you to use the filter of the story brand framework for your marketing content. Now she takes her PhD level brain and is able to create the content I want because I've given her enough to work with to create it the way I want it.
And
When she gets done creating,
that's just huge because so many people are just going out and giving simple prompts or commands, and they're getting stuff back that they think is just incredible. In many cases it is, but it may not, it may be lacking all those other features and prompts and directions. Like you said, you just hired somebody and you've given them very little direction. You could be on a slippery slope.
that's right. And here's the case that PhD level brain of AI, without the world's experience, without my knowledge, without knowing the nuances that we have to go through as agents, is going to write a listing description that's going to say, this is the perfect house to raise your children and watch them play in the pool in the backyard.
Geez,
And
Matt,
you and I
can you share with us why that might be a problem? Because sometimes people think it would be fine. So repeat that. Let us hear it again. So you've asked ChatGPT to give you, or some version of AI to give you, a remark for your advertising on your new listing, and it gives you what?
Yeah, it says, hey, this would be a great house for you to raise your children and let them and watch them play in the pool in the backyard.
Okay.
And you're like, okay, cool.
Problem.
Well, where it's not a problem, where it is a problem. In general writing outside of real estate, the story brand methodology is about you painting a story in your marketing, right? And so that would work because I told her to use story brand as a model. It's about building that story and connecting. And that would certainly connect emotionally with moms and dads. The problem is it could appear that we are excluding families based on not having children or only appealing to people who have children. Now, when you look at some states have taken the position in their hearings and said, oh, well, having children is a protected class. So inviting them means that you're inviting that protected class. Excluding them, families without children are not a protected class. Therefore, you're not in violation. That's not the norm. People will point to one or two of those obscure case laws. The norm is you should not talk about anything that's a protected class, right? You shouldn't say, imagine this property would look good for your Ukrainian clients. Like that would not be appropriate because it's alienating or showing a preference for other people groups. ChatGPT doesn't know that unless you say in your prompt, do not violate any fair housing laws. And that simple thing, again, I'm talking to my assistant here. She has a PhD level brain, but she doesn't think, because in PhD, they taught her how to write well. They didn't teach her to be cautious about fair housing things in real estate. That's what you and I learned through our process. And so those are the types of risks that agents take on. And we are liable for whatever leaves our keyboard. You're not going to be able to go to your licensing commission when a complaint's filed and go, well, ChatGPT said it, so go talk to them, because you're still responsible for your assistant created, regardless of whether it's an AI brain or an in-person assistant. The rules don't change for that. So, and then, risk is always a big issue. And I'll tell you, let me just say this and it may hurt some people's feelings. A lot of people hide their ineptness by, I don't want the risk. It's too risky. I don't want to do it. And especially in real estate and technology, agents are like, well, I don't use the internet because there's too much risk. And I don't know. It, like anything else, you have to learn how to avoid the risk.
It's a tool. You're going to drive down the street in a car. That's a risk. You're not going to drive down the street in the car with a martini.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I thought you called me a tool, which is also cool. But I,
Maybe, maybe not.
I mean, probably crossed your mind. But no, I look. It is. It's just like that. It's just like a car. Like I had to learn. I could kill somebody with my car, right? If I'm drinking, or if I'm not paying attention, or if I'm on my
Sure.
phone texting over a home inspection. Accidents do happen, and sometimes, most of the times, they're pretty avoidable. There's still a risk with it. You hear a lot of agents out there going, "I'm just not a tech savvy agent." That's nothing to brag about in 2025 because your clients certainly are. 74% of the workforce are using AI in their business day to day.
And it's not to pretend you're something that you aren't. It's simply to serve your clients better.
Yeah.
If you want to tell your clients that you used AI to write their description, I mean, I'm certain that they don't care as long as it's a good description and doesn't violate any, fair housing laws, et cetera, et cetera. So again, let's not be afraid of it. Let's embrace it. But, you were talking earlier about this. So now we've hired this assistant with a PhD that needs constant supervision.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, I know I used it for, like I said, some of my action plans. I didn't just copy and paste it and upload it into my CRM. I literally went over every single line to make sure it it did what I intended it to do. So is that really what we now need to do? Is also review everything and every level of detail that comes out of this?
Yeah, but I mean, we always should have, right? I
Right.
mean, in anything, if
Exactly.
the county gives me a tax record, I still want to, make sure that it's accurate because they're prone to mistakes. Humans enter the data and they can have bad, results coming out of it. Um, the the a lot of, and we use listing descriptions here. A lot of agents will be like, "I'm really good at writing, so I don't really need this. What else can AI do for me?" Well, you're probably decent at taking a photo, but a photographer who knows how to use bracketing and create HDR photos is better, right? And your seller did not say, "Hey, Kimberly, I'm really upset that you use a professional photographer to make our house look good," as opposed to you taking the pictures yourself. Your seller's not going to give a crap who wrote the listing description. They want to make sure it's a good quality thing with good SEO written and all these other rules that agents should not be spending their life learning SEO in 2025. Right, your time is better spent with your family and your clients and yourself than trying to go and research all these nerdy things that I've memorized and learned over years about SEO when AI can just do it for you, right? And just say, hey, use good SEO techniques for this. Get this found.
That's marketing, right? None of us, unless you are marketing experts. So you might have a degree in marketing or you just might come naturally. But so here's some of and let's just go back to your example. If you hire a photographer, maybe your photographer gives you the rights to use those photos or it sits on their site so you know that a photographer did that. If you go to the town and get data, you don't pass it on as your own. You say, as per the county records, they have this as a 3-bedroom property or a 5-bedroom or whatever, as per. We're always taught to be the source of the source and not kind of just assume it ourselves.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about Chat GPT and some of these tools. I mean, we've got agents who are, if you copy and paste something right out of Chat GPT, my argument is maybe you should be disclosing that. Agent did not write this. It was produced entirely from Chat GPT. And I'm guessing a lot of people don't want to do that. So take the stuff out of Chat GPT, go through it yourself, add your own touches to it, put your skill and knowledge behind it, and then maybe pass it on as your own. But I mean, I've seen agents, they're writing legal documents with Chat GPT. I mean, that's the stuff our nightmares are made of.
That's right. I mean, everything that your assistant creates, whether it's a digital assistant or an in-person assistant, has to be reviewed by you. It's just a first draft. This is the thing I go through. This is your PhD level brain assistant who's giving you a first draft, and then it's up to you to be the expert to maneuver the content to where you want it to be, regardless of whether it could be your checklist, it could be your listing description, it could be your blog post, graphics, those types of things. We've talked for years, just kind of lingering the risk management issue for a while. Like if you're in a community that is, um, let's say 12% African American and 7% Latino, and whatever, your graphics should represent them in equal portion, right? 20% of your if you're using models in your photos or whatever, it should reflect the people around you. No, most of us don't live in a community that's strictly white 30-year-olds who look like they're on the cover of GQ, yet agents will keep using those models. This is what, not just agents, people in our industry or associations and things that will use stock photos. And it's always this super attractive guy or gal with an iPad in their hand, walking around this beautiful home with this young couple who look like, they're from the show Billions. I mean, and it's just not the reality for what you and I face. My clients look like they just got rolled out of bed and cleaned their house and changed their oil, and then I come look at properties. So, I really think whether it's the written content or the visuals, they should represent who we really are working with. And I, as an agent, have the obligation to make that happen when it comes from my assistant or a stock photo machine or whatever it is.
So I'm with a client and there's a mistake on something. How do I look when there's an error? And we all make mistakes, but when there's an error, and then what am I going to say? Oh, ChatGPT did that. I didn't. I mean, you look lazy, you look
Right.
sloppy, and you may look a little disingenuous because if you're not disclosing it was from ChatGPT, unless something goes wrong and now you're blaming ChatGPT, we need to set some guidelines up because there's a lot of good with this, a lot of time saving, like you said, a lot of things that it can do, and then a lot of things that it shouldn't be doing or it shouldn't be doing without another set of eyes. Like, for example, if you're going to write a legal document as a real estate agent, we have an obligation not to practice law, but then maybe you send the language to the attorney and say, is this something you're okay with? And get the blessing from somebody who does have the education to do it.
And there's a, I don't know if it's a trick to that, but so my prompt, I do have it rewrite stuff. This is the big thing for me. I don't want it to write it. I want to rewrite it. And one of my prompts actually says, not for legal documents, but for everything else, have a 2%, 2% of the content should use improper grammar, but not misspelling a word. So it means it looks a little bit more genuine because I forgot a comma or I use a semicolon instead of a colon, that kind of stuff. And that tends to make it more human because people reading it goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's, should have used a comma here, but at least it was written by a person. For legal documents, though, one of the things I will stipulate in the prompt is, write this, let's say, home inspection addendum. Do not go outside of the scope of my license and ensure that this is legally binding in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I do not say act as an attorney and draft this. And I'll also say write at a 7th grade reading level. So it needs to be legally binding in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Read what I just wrote and adjust for grammar, make sure it's legally binding, write at a 7th grade reading level. That gets you the same end result, but it gets you something that is not practicing law. Like if you start seeing Latin in your description, there's like, I took Latin at school and I'm a nerd and I like it, but I don't ever use it in day-to-day life except for when I'm making an argument and I get really mad about something. So, that's your clip.
So I wanted to share two things while we're on the topic of legal. One, I've actually heard that attorneys, and I'm not saying I know any of them, but are using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT does what they call hallucinate and actually makes up case law or cases that it refers to that don't exist. And these attorneys are just getting, horribly reprimanded in courts of law because they're representing information that they didn't research or confirm themselves. So, can you talk a little bit about what this hallucination thing is? Because your previous prompt about write a home inspection addendum or whatever, make it legal in your state, and whatever, sounds like I did all I possibly could, and if it's not right, it's not my fault. But tell us what hallucinating is from a AI standpoint.
So yeah, I read an article yesterday. So I spent a lot of time on AI outside of this. Again, I'm an 80s kid, so sci-fi is my jam, computer nerd stuff, all this stuff we saw in the movies before has always captured my attention. So, and I have a fairly vivid imagination. So I actually am one of those people who can get lost talking to ChatGPT and forget that it's just a robot and not somebody on the other end of the phone. I can be immersed in it, right? So I do catch myself with these things and have to remember before the words leave my keyboard out into the universe, out to whatever it is, I have to pay attention to these things. But yesterday, I read an article about a prison inmate who became an attorney. He actually, did all the studying in prison, and was trying. He can't take the bar until he leaves and stuff like that. But did all the pre-work and decided all the studying he's done, all this college work he's done in prison to one day become an attorney. He decided to write his own legal document trying to get a pardon or something. It wasn't a pardon, but whatever it was. And he used AI. He used AI to do it. And it had misquoted lawsuits that don't exist. Here's what people don't understand is that sometimes it is hallucination. Sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out. Remember, it is learning from the totality of the world's knowledge. And if someone has published incorrect work, AI will use that incorrect work, right? They may have gotten it out of a textbook. And that's where we're calling hallucination, but they are pulling case studies that are made up for college exams, for example, or hypotheticals for college training for attorneys. And they plug in these fake cases that got from the textbook. The other thing is that there's been a lot of testing in this, and there's these new models that they test on. And ChatGPT is wrong about 2% of the time, which still, by the way, is better than most agents I talk to. But it's 2% of the time it's wrong. And the other case that you see where, again, it's being labeled as hallucination. So the first case is it's not hallucination. It just took hypothetical data from textbook and said ingested. The second time, it is just absolutely wrong. You can't figure out why. Which is about 2% of the time. And the third case is it is putting placeholders in things with the presumption that when you ask it to generate something, it is generating the first draft and that you as the human should know what to put in there. Now, ChatGPT could do better of saying this is a placeholder, right? Instead of just putting that data in there. But from time to time, it puts data in there and says, okay, based on this case, such and such and such. And it seems very authentic and very real when really it's one of those three buckets. It's either a case study, a hypothetical from some website or textbook. It could just be wrong. Or it's a placeholder to say, hey, you have to go do the work to tell you what cases you want in here, and I'll plug them in for you.
And you can ask it to provide references and citations, which then you can go and click on those links and determine whether or not that's data you want to include or not include.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And that's where people forget to do just that. Like, hey, give me citations for what you're quoting here. And I just worked on something with our state for a licensing issue, and the code section that was being posed, I didn't agree with, and I felt there were some conflicts. And I was able to say, go search our law, give me both case laws that would define what my objection is, and the statutes that would align with what I think. But I need you to give me citations. And it took you right to the website where you can get those things. And then one of them, the case citation it gave actually agreed with the lawmaker and not with me. So I just kicked that one out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, it actually, I'm totally kidding. It actually did start making me rethink. Yes, I know what the statute says, but the lawmaker wants to change that, and I'm okay with change. I'm okay with him changing that. Now I see where he is perhaps getting that from. So citations are very important.
Yeah, I love all of this. I feel like it's like now I'm really dating myself, but the MLS when we got rid of the books, and most of you don't even know what an MLS book is, and I'm just fine with that. But there was so much concern and worry over that going to the internet, and then the internet absolutely making all the data available for everyone. The value of us as licensees and as realtors was the data is now available to anyone. We're no longer the keepers of the data, but we need to interpret that data. And that's something we do based upon our skill and experience and our knowledge in this business. So we interpret the data, but that's going to be the same thing. So 25 years later, we've got ChatGPT. It's not going to replace, it might replace some of what we do, but our responsibility is still to interpret what comes out of it. And if you're going to pass that on as your own, then you need to be understand as, and I say you, I mean all of us as licensees need to understand that we're responsible for that. So whether it's right, whether it's wrong, is not going to get us off the hook if we've passed it off as our own.
Yeah, and like, first of all, I appreciate the fact that you brought up the MLS books, because apparently what is old is new again, and there are some companies bringing up books. But unlike the old days of old, where they would take the books around to our brokerages, now you have to go to that brokerage to see the book, because
That was not
the
lost on me. That was not, and again, another podcast for those people
yeah.
that want to keep their listings to just their books. But
Oh my goodness. But when we're talking about this particular episode is about AI and risk management. This is what we've spent the majority of the time talking on. There's a lot of blessing, and I think a lot of great hacks and tools, but you still got to know the basics to get back where you are. So, for example, I wrote recently, and we'll put in the show notes a link, matthewrathbun.com/AI, and I've got a free book of AI prompts you can go grab from there, and videos and tutorials and things like that. But I wrote a prompt that is magical, and it's a step-by-step on how to get your comps and adjustments through using ChatGPT. And so you take all the homes that sold, you pull that from MLS, you take your RPR, NAR RPR report about the subject property and the market conditions, throw it in there, put in a magic prompt, and you're going to get a nice spreadsheet with what properties would be appropriate for comps and adjustments already done. And it's a beautiful thing.
but you
And
got
while I
to
was
be able to speak to it, otherwise you're going to look quite foolish, right?
That's exactly right. But someone recently said, well, are you still teaching an 8-hour class, the professional, um, uh, what is the PSA? The
Pricing strategy advisor.
Holy cow. Yeah, the pricing strategy advisor. Yeah, we teach that, right? I knew what the name was. Anyways, the pricing strategy advisor is teaching 8 hours. And I'm like, absolutely. Because if as an agent, I don't know how the machine got there, I don't know when the machine is wrong. Right. And
You need to know how it's done. You may not need to do it yourself every time, but if you don't know enough about how it's done, it's like you're a chef. The meal looks fabulous, but did they substitute arsenic for salt? Right? You're still
yeah.
responsible.
Yeah. Or do you know that you're not allowed to use sugar in place of salt just because they're both white crystalline
Exactly.
spices? Like there's a lot of good stuff that'll help you stay out of trouble and help you stay competitive. And I think it's important to know our clients, as I said earlier, are using this stuff. I had an agent reach out to me with a little frustration recently. She just joined us. She'd been with us for weeks. She was at a different company for a very long time. And she goes, Matthew, my client is using ChatGPT to second guess me. And it put out a contract in ChatGPT and says that stuff I'm telling them isn't accurate. And I'm like, so tell me about the story. Tell me what's, and ChatGPT was right. And she was giving information that was a very commonly misunderstood thing amongst agents. ChatGPT is not commonly misunderstood. It's going to read the contract and give that information to her. And I said, unfortunately, this is I've said this repeatedly since past 2.5 years since AI kind of arrived on the scene. It's a help. It's an enhancement for us. It can't be a replacement for us unless we let it. And if we don't know our own contract, that's a huge problem.
Well,
And if ChatGPT embarrasses you, that's not ChatGPT's fault. That's your fault for not knowing your contract.
so now not only do we have to know what we're talking about, but we have to be prepared to double down on it and explain and expand. So we as educators or instructors, at least me, I measure myself by how many different ways can I explain one topic until everybody in the room gets it. And sometimes that's 5, 6, 7, or 8 times. And that's what ChatGPT is going to do. If our clients who have zero experience in selling real estate go out to this PhD assistant and get
Yeah.
very high level stuff and then deliver it back to us, they expect an explanation. And we have got to be able to speak to that higher level because we are the experts and they have hired us. But to your point, exactly. Don't get over your skis if you don't know what you're talking about, because your client will do a search and figure out that you don't, and then you'll be challenged. And there's, sometimes saying, I'm not aware of that, but let me check with my broker, or let me do some, investigation and I'll get back to you, is far better than making something up, having to be challenged on it, and then having to say, well, I really didn't know what I was talking about. Or I maybe went to ChatGPT myself, but I can't talk anymore on this issue because, you know, I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. Well, that doesn't work in this business. You do need to know what you're talking about. So convenience, um, obviously it helps with marketing, efficiency, analysis of data, but you are not, you are still responsible and liable for the accuracy of it.
Yeah, and that's right. And as a broker, I created a GPT. So let me just talk a little bit about this. You've heard us in this episode stick specifically to ChatGPT, and there is a myriad of other tools out there. There are literally thousands of them. I typically stick with ChatGPT, sometimes Anthropic's Claude, and sometimes Google Gemini, and very, very rarely for those two, because we become masterful at the thing we do most often, right? And so I want to get to know one system and have it learn from me. So ChatGPT does a great job of remembering what you've asked and what you liked and what you appreciated and giving you those results and seeing continuity. So when I tell it 3 or 4 times, do not violate fair housing, the fifth time when I forget to tell it to do that, it'll say, oh, by the way, he always adds, and it'll ask, did you want to make sure that we're in accordance with fair housing? And I can say, yes. And remember, always, everything I create has to be in alignment with the Fair Housing Act. Now I don't have to do it anymore. That's the benefit of using one tool. But also, a lot of these tools have not put the same safeguards up that others have. And so I'm just going to chat about ChatGPT for a moment. ChatGPT is it knows it's the biggest name out there. It has a lot to lose if it is caught doing things wrong. So Grok, which is Twitter or X's now AI model, it has just in the past 2 weeks, it's had some noteworthy issues, in that it's put out a lot of racist comments. It's talked about white genocide. It's talked about a lot of stuff that is more politically driven, because that's its learning source, right? Twitter, not the place I would want AI to learn how to rule the world one day.
Yeah.
But there's also some questionable programming and things like that. DeepSeek, which everybody kind of heralded because it was the free version of the high level of ChatGPT, that came from China, and we have talked about. We being the industry has talked about the influence that China is investing in TikTok and other things, about what it wants Americans to see. If you go to DeepSeek and you start asking it questions, it's going to tell you that the communist China is the best form of government, that Tiananmen Square did not happen. Like, it's a lot of things that are very influenced by their government, because it's a government entity. So ChatGPT, Google Gemini are trying very hard to walk that line. And on those two tools, it will not create pornography. It will not create acts of violence. It will not create image in any of the image of a current living public figure. And there's a whole bunch of other safeguards that's put in place. About 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now, we have been struggling with identifying copyright issues, because obviously all of these machine learning systems had to get its data from somewhere. It's done it from literature, it's done it from art, it's done it from the social media, from blog posts, from all these things that have influenced it. Clearly, it's taken materials out of books and stories and other things. So you can say, write this poem in, under this famous poet's style, and it'll be influenced by it, but it won't write exactly that stuff. And so recently, the director of copyright in the US issued a very lengthy set of reports about the government's position on the use of copywritten material. Now, up until this point, we haven't had any guidelines. When President Biden came into office, his administration issued something called the AI Bill of Rights, which was supposed to be a guardrail and a guideline, the starting point to talk about legislating the development of AI in the United States. They had one very public meeting where billionaires and public officials got together. I'm sure it was very productive, for the Congress people who were there. And then nothing happened. Nothing came of it. No regulation, no anything. President Trump takes office, and one of his first day initiatives is to overturn the AI Bill of Rights, which he does. And that, again, it wasn't a law; it was a governing document to start a process. So that's gone away. There's no other government regulation. We have a myriad of court cases about copyright issues pending in court, but nothing's come about. So the very first concrete thing we get is from the director of copyright, where her team puts together and says, these are likely violations. And it's an incredibly well articulated argument. And if you get the PDF, it's like 100 pages. It's a thick read. So go put it into Google Notebook LM and let it give you a summary and a podcast about it. I actually did read it. I read with my human eyes the whole thing. Very well articulated, challenged some of the things I had believed about copyright art and rules and the impact of humanity. Within a couple of days of her posting this, the Trump administration fired her from her position. The most of the conjecture is it was related to this because President Trump has been very overt about his desire to reduce legislation and open up commerce, and this was very restrictive on the AI models. And a lot of those people that this was restricting on was sitting behind him during inauguration, right? So there's a lot of both policy and politics involved in this. So she's removed from that position. However, the guidelines that she presented, that her team presented, are still the government's position. Now, you have to imagine that immediately upon that document going public, it was now used as evidence and in briefs for all these myriad of pending copyright lawsuits that have yet to go through the court as an argument of this was the U.S. government's position. If I were a betting person, I would say that when this is all said and done, we'll get another director of copyright for the Copyright Office who will likely overturn that and have so much more vague language about it. Because the government is establishing something that the courts yet haven't, the judiciary hasn't yet, and so we'll see what happens there.
Here's what I'm gonna say, and and that's first of all, it shouldn't be surprising to any of us because this is just politics, left, right, or indifferent. This is just politics. But
yeah,
I guess my question to our real estate listeners is: do you want to be the test case?
Yeah.
Some of you're taking this and you're going to run with it and say, I have no requirements. I don't have to do this. I'm not going to get in trouble. And some of you, the pendulum has swung the other way and you're petrified and horrified. Let's come back to the center on this. If you want to be the first test case, then, go run with scissors.
But, that's exactly right.
It just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that it won't or that it will. Just again, be very cautious because at the highest level of our own government, we can't figure it out.
That's right. And deregulation was in the forefront of the Trump administration's process to get elected. I think he's delivering on the message that he promised that deregulation was going to happen across the board to free up commerce, which we can talk about the history of that in some other episode or whatever. It's not a political statement as much as the reality where we are is that we are swimming in an ocean that seems warm and comfortable, but there are sharks out there, and we don't know who they will be. For us as agents, the copyright issue seems to be a barrier for a lot of agents to invest in AI. It is a very small part of what we're doing. To be very clear, that if you tell ChatGPT, write this addendum like J.R. Tolkien would, the Lord of the Rings, and you are taking immediate excerpts out of that book, you may have some copyright issues. To be influenced by a structure that's an academic structure. Again, I talked about Donald Miller and StoryBrand, and I say, hey, use the StoryBrand methodology or the structure. He's been very public and put that information out in the world. I don't want to say write this like Donald Miller would and use chapter 2 as a thing, but rather to say influence it by these things. You're okay. You're fine in an area. Your PhD level assistant now knows how you want to write and craft materials. But it's derivative work is derivative work comes from the human mind. What you and I learned in college about literature, we now implement when we write, but we don't have perfect memories. AI has perfect memory, which was kind of the core or the crux of what the director of copyright seemed to be facing. Um, Derivative work is fine. We're allowed to do that. It's exact work that becomes a problem. And hopefully none of you are copying and pasting, Midsummer Night's Dream in your listing description. You're probably okay there. So don't get wrapped around the axles of this, but just be very careful to use phrases like be influenced by this work, not copy this person's work or create an image in this work. By the way, ChatGPT and Gemini won't let you do that anyways. There are other tools out there that would. I get that these risks are in the forefront of a lot of agents' mind because there's a lot of tech phobia out there, agents who are afraid of technology in general, about everything that's out there. And there's some good reason to be cautious. But having a license brings with it inherent risk. If you decide to take a client to show a property, if you decide to write a description, sign a listing agreement, just having a license could have some risk, and you don't avoid that. These tools will help, I think, enhance a lot of what we do. It'll move us forward. It'll make us far more competitive, and let the robots do the robots work, so you can spend more time on yourself and your family. Right? Let the robot do the robot stuff, so we can focus more time on our consumer and the human part of this. We've talked here for nearly an hour about the risks associated with AI. There's a lot of benefit. We just wanted to make sure in this podcast we covered some of the risks, but there's other episodes we'll do about the benefits, some other cool tools we'll talk about, some great hacks that you can implement in your business to make you more profitable and work a little bit better.
I think also we as an industry, there are a number of different business models, but it's not likely that a new agent or somebody just breaking into this business goes out and hires an assistant. And that's more common in other industries. So it doesn't surprise me that we have a lot of people gravitating towards this virtual assistant type of tool. So, like you just said, let's embrace it, let's use it, but recognize it is a tool that comes with risk and a lot of great benefits. We just need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. I love this conversation. It was good to get some of this stuff off. We need to do a future episode where we just talk about the benefits of each tool and some other things. We'll get there too. That'll add that to the list. So Kimberly, as always, we're going to check out here and wrap this episode up, but we want to end with our favorite tools to share. What is your favorite tool for today?
Oh boy. So I have a tool, and of course there are a number of them out there, so I'm not even quite sure that I will list a brand because I'm not 100% pleased with the ones that I'm using, but I think it's great to be reminded that there is something out there that will take your text messages off of your phone and allow you to download them as a PDF, which then I upload into my transaction platform, and it stays with the document for it stays with the file for the life of that file. So in my case, it's probably 7 years that I'm keeping that transaction file. And because so much of what we do happens in text messaging, in life in general, I am able to download all of the content between my clients or my cooperating brokerage agent that I'm working with, or really anybody that's important to that transaction. I can download it as a PDF and then upload it, and then and then get it off my phone, first of all, because my phone's so full of messaging. Storage space is just full of it. But it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that all of the stuff that we talked about in a text message can be done. Now, I've had a couple of different programs. Some of them are a little bit older than I'd like them to be. Most of them require hooking your phone up through an actual cable to your computer and then making the transition that way. I'll just let our listeners know that tool exists, and it might be something you want to speak to your broker about.
Yeah, I will say both of us have done professional standards work, and, code of ethics, or even uh, some expert legal work for attorneys and things like that. And it's so mind numbing to get page after page of screenshots from text message instead of a chronological order too. So not just for your transaction, but just having that ready in case there's a complaint or in case there's ever a question. I mean, I personally would prefer never to use text message in a business setting ever, but I know that's not a reality and everybody disagrees with me. So just like your email that you save, text messages can be very good in evidence. And if you go, like some have your Android or iPhone where it deletes it after 30 days or after a year, well, that lawsuit could come 5 years later. So better to do exactly what you're saying. Take the thread between you and your clients, print it out in a PDF, upload it in a transaction file so you have it in case there's a risk issue. Great one. That's a good one. Mine is a little bit more related to the AI stuff. Google AI Studio, which you can find at aistudio.google.com, is a very good tool. There's a lot of free stuff to play with there. It'll create photos and read PDFs and create materials and things for you. It's fun to play with. It's a little bit different than ChatGPT, and it's a little bit more robust in some of the stuff. I still find ChatGPT to be better quality than Google in most cases, but if you're looking for a place to play and get some information and create what they call multimodal resources, that's a good place to go start. And again, it's fun to go play with. So go check it out and create some new content for you, new buyer guides, seller guides, blog posts, whatever.
And Matthew, you've been fun to play with today, so thank you.
You too, as always. Thanks so much. And until next time, we'll see you guys around.
The Meet the Moment podcast is a production of the Real Estate Business Institute, an affiliate of the National Association of Realtors. Special thanks to CEO Jenny Scheib and to Dan Shea, our editor and content producer. The views and ideas expressed in this podcast are not necessarily shared or endorsed by REBI. All recommendations made in this episode were merely provided as best practices. The practices of any realtor are subject to the Realtor Code of Ethics, the laws and licensing jurisdiction, broker policies, and competent legal advice. Visit www.rebinstitute.com for more information, resources, education, and upcoming events.